So I spent the last 4 years turning this ute here into what I thought was going to be the perfect touring four-wheel drive. So you know what? It's finally time to take you on a detailed walkthrough of everything I've done to the car. But spoiler alert, it's not all good. But it wouldn't be a proper walkthrough if I wasn't truthful and tell you 3 things that I absolutely hate and I will be fixing in the near future. I've always wanted to do one of those like cool cinematic montages in one of my videos, but I didn't think that you would like it. Wait, you do want to see it? I don't care if you don't want to see it, I'm going to show you anyway.
You can outrun the devil, but you ain't gonna outrun me. You ain't gonna outrun me. You ain't gonna.
We're going to start up the front with the trusty Steed. Steed? Is that the right word? I don't know, whatever. The trusty car thing that we decided to build everything on top of. It is a Mazda BT50, which is an Isuzu D-Max with a Mazda logo chucked on the front. It is the 4JJ3 engine. If you know anything about the 4JJ1, they're an amazing engine, pretty much as good as you can get for a modern engine, minus the turbo. And this thing has 150,000 Ks on it, and I'm a huge fan. I've had 0 issues with it apart from the bump steer and then just general maintenance stuff, but that will be for another video, maybe like 180-ish thousand K review. But that's enough of that. Let's go on to the first thing, which is the bar. It's a rocker bar from MCC. It's got a bit of an extra big gap here because I did a body lift, so it looks a bit jank, but the gap was always a bit weird on this thing. I could never quite get it right. And I do kind of like the look of it. It's probably the 3rd best bar I have seen on a BT50, but I don't know if it's the powder coating that's bad or the fact that I like to drive through a shit ton of salt water that has kind of given it this like faded look. But I do think a good cut and polish, I've seen some people cut and polish the powder coating and it does look kind of good. And then we come around to the spotties, which is something that I only just recently chucked on here because the high beams on the new cars are so insanely good, you don't really need them. But I do like the orange lens caps because when you turn them on, it doesn't like blind yourself. It actually lights the road quite nicely. It cuts the range down a little bit, but it is better, I would say. And then under here, we have our winch, an ultra winch. It's one of the lighter kind of versions you can get. And you can also rotate the clutch assembly. So you can put the clutch on the front or the top, depending on what kind of bar setup you have. But I did also have to cut my grill out, which I think is more of a problem with the rocker bar winch cradle than it is a winch problem itself. Under there are also MCC bash plates. I think they're super thick steel, so they may also get replaced for something a bit lighter because there is some brands that do really good ones. And we also just have a cheap UHF. It's not the cheapest, but it is still very cheap. We don't really use it as much as we should. Should probably get on it more often. I suppose the next thing we should probably talk about is the snorkel. I'm not going to mention the brand of the snorkel because it has caused me so many issues. It's basically put so much pressure on the door because the angle bracket wasn't at the correct angle that it has started sanding away the paint under the door sill. It's also ruined my door seals like 3 times, and it has caused my window to break, well, the window mechanism to break twice. So we'll ignore that, but Stanos are cool, it kind of makes it sound nice. And then we'll go on to the tires. We have the Wild Peak Mud Terrains. I did used to have the All Terrains, but I wanted to go up and in the middle size, and they only had Wild Peaks in the Mud Terrains in the 295. The All Terrains that I had, the AT3s, still pretty much look brand new, and I think I did like 20,000 Ks on them. The rims are Dirty Life Enigmas. I believe that's what they're called. They're just imitation beadlocks. They look kind of good, but they kind of also look like every other rim that is out there these days. So I'm not attached to these rims in any way. I kind of want to upgrade. So up in here, we have fixed upper control arms, not adjustable. They're the Super Pro ones. It was just the recommendation from Fulcrum, so that is what I went with. But the suspension, which I absolutely love, it's my first ever remote res system I've had, the Formula F4R kit. And honestly, if you don't have adjustable shocks and you do a ton of corrugated driving, you should get some. Letting your tires down is going to help the most, but just being able to crank that suspension all the way down to the softest possible makes the ride so much better. And then being able to tighten it back up when you get onto the road gives you that kind of like go-kart feeling. You can just do that. I do also have the bump steer correction because I did run into that tire wearing issue from the bump steer, I think 2 or 3 times. So I had to buy 3 tires, I think, just because it was worn on the inside, completely brand new on the outside. And I have not had that issue since. And I think they've been on there for probably 40,000 Ks. So definitely worth your money if you're running into that bump steer issue and Isuzu won't warrant you because you have a lift kit. We did used to have some sliders slash steps. Well, they were really just side steps, but we took them off because I liked how much higher it looked without them. For the roof rack on here, we have a front runner rack. I don't think it's the slimline one, it's just the traditional one, which allows you to slide your table in here, which I'll show you out the back when we get there. And then we just have our Max Tracks up on top with the factory Max Track pins. And we don't really have much more room on the roof rack because the Canopy camper comes over so far. Normally right here is our shower tent, but that thing fell off today because I decided to only mount it with 2 bolts where it's supposed to be 4 bolts. So it decided to pull away from the aluminium extrusion, but that's completely my fault. Nothing on the shower tent itself, but I'll probably just drill some holes into these brackets and then it will be sorted. Next up on the back, we do have Airbag Man airbags and 500 kilo constant leafs. The 500 kilo constant leafs probably manage it fine, but I do find after like a year to 2 years of loading up your leafs in the back, they do eventually start to sag, and the airbags kind of just stop that from happening as quickly. And also F4R shocks in the back make a huge difference. And then on the back we have the MCC rear rocker bar, I think it's just called, which you can really see the body gap here from the body lift. So when I get home, I'm really tempted to remove this thing because I have the D-Max tub rear bar, which fits in here like perfectly and looks just 100 times better. But I obviously do lose some of the protection. I think I've only scraped this thing 2 times, and that was before the tires were this size. But then as I fix that, I do also need to fix a new toe ball. And I don't know if people do raise toe balls for these cars, and I don't want the toe ball to be the low point of the car. And under here, you can see we do have a Talkit exhaust. I mean, I can't hear the exhaust when I drive, but I do notice when Loz is driving, or if the car drives past me for whatever reason, it does definitely sound different. Honestly, kind of a bonus probably that I don't hear in the car because I'd probably get a little bit sick of it. This is the front runner table that we were talking about. This one is the one that slides under the roof rack. Kind of one of my favorite things I ever did. And so is this table here. This is a Mirac swing away arm, so it's just hitch mounted, and you also get to maintain your hitch over here, which means you can still tow a boat or something. And then you can add a bunch of accessories. This is kind of chucked on here a little bit janky, but this is our cactus bag. Love the cactus bags. And this stainless table just hides up behind, it just slides back and then drops down as you swing it out. And it is great for like, as we unload stuff from the back, there's just a nice little spot to put it. Thing number one that I really want to fix in this setup before we head out on our next trip is the whole back seat situation. I don't actually mind this layout, but I think we're just wasting a lot of space with the seats still in here. The freezer, great, love it. And it's actually in a really good spot because when we pull up to camp, my camera bag normally sits here. We just chuck it on the front seats and that has plenty of ventilation and it runs really well. But what I would like to do is take these seats out, which will give us whatever that is, 20 centimeters here more and 30 centimeters going back towards the cabin, and then just put a basic wooden deck in there and then have everything sitting on that. So as well as our Max Tracks that we have on the roof rack, our fishing rods also just run down the side there just with fishing rod straps and these little bag things. But we have also got our surfboard bag solar panel, which I DIY'd. It's kind of dodgy, but it does actually work. And then we have our big panel, which is 190 watts from Energive, and that thing rips. I've seen it push upwards of 10 to 12 amps because we're maxed out our solar input, I think at like 22-ish amps, which is rare. Like we're not doing that here because it's quite like humid. And in terms of engine mods or anything like that, we have not really done any. There is a like temporary tune, which is just like a chip basically that plugs into a couple sensors and gives them a slightly different reading, gives you a little bit more boost. But the only real mod that we have done, hopefully you'll be able to see it under here, is a full steel long range fuel tank. The one that comes in a BT50 is only 80-ish litres, and that one is 145, I believe. And just doing the kind of trips that we need, that is absolutely needed. And the brand that the fuel tank is Brown Davis. It's great. The only thing I really want to do is try find someone that does the recalibration for your fuel tank sender. Honestly, don't even know if that's possible on newer cars, but if it is, I want to do it. So we just did a tiny little jump cut to tomorrow morning because we ran out of light and it was looking a bit bad. We kind of already talked about most of the stuff on the back, but the only thing we missed is our toilet. In WA especially, a lot of the camp spots that you stay at, you actually need a chemical toilet. But we have the Julka one, which has swappable canisters, I think they're called. You can do like composting and bagged, or you can go to normal chemical toilet. And I have both of them, but for this trip, we're just using the composting or bagged one, which makes it really easy to use. And also you don't have to smell all the gross chemicals. And then the camping setup, the main focus of it all. And then starting off the back, we have the EnerDrive Adventurer system, which is kind of the brains of the whole fit out back here. This little top section here is the auto breakers, and then we have your switches. We only have 3 of the 4 hooked up. This one is for our rooftop lighting, and then we have water, and then we have lighting. There's also another switch for the under table lighting. And then down a little bit, we have our Cymarine screen, which shows you like your voltages, your percentage and your tank percentage, which is hooked up to our water tank, which I'll show you in a bit. And then down here we have our inverter, which is wired into an extension cord. So we don't have to plug the induction into the front, that's just permanently hooked up. The only thing that we really plug into the front is our full-sized barista coffee machine. The portafilter is just here. And then through this little door here, we can get to like the tamper, and the milk jug is normally there, but we just made coffee, so it is currently dirty. And all the latches I have used in the whole fit out are these latches here. I used them in my old fit out. I wasn't like the biggest fan, and I'm still not. I think I need to use aluminium for it to latch onto, and then it'll be better. But that's something I can fix for another time. And then we come over to this side here, which is kind of what dictated the height of the bench seat, is our Dometic fridge. This is not scratches and stuff on the front. We just haven't peeled off the plastic peel because we're like, oh well, we might as well protect it for as long as we can. It is a 50-litre upright, and we have also removed the freezer that's up the top. Right now it's not really in use, but we can stand like full-size milk and stuff up in there, and it just gives us way more storage. And because we have the freezer in the back, we didn't really need that little freezer. But if we're going on weekend trips, we would probably chuck that freezer back in there and use that. And now that you're up here in the setup with me, it brings me to this second thing that I hate about this build, and that is the water tank. It just led to a lot of complications, including me having to spend like $300 on the wire to run from the battery system to the battery, which is under my butt right now, and us losing probably 1/8 of our usable space. So what we would really like to do in the future is take the water tank from here, put it underneath the tub, and then we would probably just extend the bench seat and the bench top over this section, and maybe keep this little bit here as 2 quite tall drawers. And then that's where our air fryer and sandwich press would go, because we want them to be quite easily accessible. And if they have their own drawers with nothing else in it, they will be even easier to get to, and then we'd probably likely use them even more. But this is honestly probably my biggest gripe about this setup. So it might not really look like it, but we do have a lot of small things going on here. We have our lighting, which we talked about before. They're plenty bright enough, but the one thing we do hate about them is if you flick the switch on and off, they default to off. So like you turn your lighting switch on there, these are off, and you have to climb up and push the button. Really dumb design. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. And they do switch amber and white, which is good because we want the amber if we have that back section open. And then just down here is the switch that I talked about that does the under table lighting. Might be a bit tricky to see. And these are also on a dimmer, which we never use. And then one thing that I do like about this camper is all the windows have a thing called Molly panel, which is just laser cut aluminium, and they let you put little bags on it like these. I think these ones are from Outbound Industries. They're just little pouches, and we just have like our toothbrushes, the paper towel, and like baby wipes and soap in one. And it's just like a nice, neat way to have stuff that you're using every 5 minutes, really easily accessible. And speaking of easily accessible, our kitchen sink, this is one thing we really wanted to do when we knew we were going to start doing the camper style setup, was just having a sink so we can make sure that we actually do our dishes every single day. And the only things that belong in the sink are the chopping board and the bowls. They just rest in here perfectly, and like a sponge. And then in transit, they stay nice and still. And then we have a sink and water just at literally the flick of a switch. There is a hot and cold splitter, which does work. To connect the hot, there's just a quick connect down under this panel that we plumb our hot water system into. And then we have our hot water coming straight from the sink. Pretty easy setup, probably could do it way cleaner, but it's just simple, which means it's not gonna break. And if it does break, it's really easy to fix. And then with the rest of the camper, we're gonna start left to right and work ourselves around. We have our induction cooktop, which is a Dometic dual hob. One hob is 1000 watts, the other is 1300. Which if you don't know what that means, it just means that one of them has slightly more power, so it gets to a higher temperature. We're really, really liking this induction cooktop, but our pots and pans that we've got that are all new, I think need a bit of an upgrade. The metal base is just a little bit thin, so I think they lose a lot of the heat really quickly. Which we do notice when we have it on 9, the induction is definitely getting really, really hot, getting a good like sear on stuff. But as soon as we turn it down, the pans seem to lose the heat quite quickly. And I know what the first question that you are going to ask is, how much battery do you use using the induction cooktop? I think our rough estimate is 10 to 20% of a 300 amp hour lithium battery, which could both sound like a lot and not much. But I think when we get those better pans, it's gonna help a bunch. And I'm pretty sure our recharge rate with just our solar, no driving, we will top that up every single day. I think we top up about 30% just solar if we keep the car positioned well. So for our setup and how we camp, an induction cooker does work really well for us. And then we'll go down into the drawers. So the drawers are all way too thick. They're, I think, almost 20 mil ply. They only needed to be probably 10. With the thicker front panels would have been completely fine. So we do lose a bit of storage for every drawer, but they're all on soft close sliders, which just gives a real nice feeling. I'm just going to do a quick run through of all of the drawers and what they have in them. I won't show you because it will get quite long. Down here in the postie style one, we have our plates and our coffee cups, and then that's where we can get access to the milk jug. The top one that you would have just seen is our cutlery and like spatulas and stuff. And then over into the middle, we have just our sandwich press, our Tupperware, and our pots and pans handles. And then the one below it is pantry space, but mostly just like our snacks and dry noodles. Down the bottom, we have a completely removable drawer front, but no drawer in there, and that's where our pots and pans live. We did that, so we just pull all the pots and pans out in a big clump, and then we just take out what we need, slide them back, and they kind of go in quite easily. But I do want to take a few things out there because sometimes it can get a bit jammed up. And then the rightmost drawer is more pantry space. And then underneath that one, we have our mini air fryer, which is this big. It's just from Kmart. Our Glad wrap, Ziploc bags, foil, all that stuff. And then mostly just our herbs, spices, and oil. I'm out of breath. And that now brings me to the third thing that I hate about this setup. This one is a pretty big design flaw and is 100% my fault. I probably should have like sat at a couch and put a bench top in front of me and figured out what height we would actually like it. Because as you can see, the bench seat sits probably about 8 centimeters lower than the bench top, and we don't have a backrest. Cooking isn't like the worst, but it does get quite annoying. Like if you're trying to concentrate, you're leaning over and down to basically your knee level. But when you're doing the dishes, it is the worst because you are like leaning into it. So you're basically on your elbows trying to do the dishes. Lower back absolutely kills. It's just pretty uncomfortable. So what I'm thinking is if we raised this thing almost honestly 20 centimeters, almost to the top of here is what we would need, and then it would be like prime, so much more comfortable, and it would even allow us to store stuff underneath. I'm thinking that's where our chairs could slide, and maybe even a couple of storage cubes. And this was a recommendation that some of you made when I was doing the build video, and I think that is something that we will probably look at doing in the future. Well, I lied, it's something I will definitely do in the future, but I just have to figure out exactly how I want to go about doing it and still making it look real nice. And then over this side, which you would have seen me sitting on, is our bench seat. At the moment, we just have this like cheap little rug thrown over it, and we'll probably sew one better in the future, but this is just a day bed from Bunnings. There is no squish in that, so I want to get something like custom made, a proper thick cushion, and maybe even make a box that slides out, and then that acts as the backrest as well as some extra storage that's accessible from the outside. That's me getting ridiculous. Basically making an expanded camper, but that's for another time. And then down here we have our bench seat and our battery and the fridge vents kind of into this area. I would really, really like to put a 12-volt fan, or actually maybe it would make more sense if it was a blow because the hot air would be up top. Anyway, we'll figure that out. But in here is just some tools and honestly, mostly fishing stuff. So it's just nice and easy to access from the outside window. And there is way more storage in here than it looks like, because obviously you can see how high that is. That's like my knee height, so it's quite deep. And we get a bunch of stuff in there, as well as on top of the water tank. So we have all the other tools, spare parts are here. Our really long hose sits under this bit, which doesn't lift up. And then here, this is our compressor. And then even more tools and screws and our little axe all kind of just fit in there. So pretty much between just these two boxes, that's all of our extra storage. So I know a lot of you are going to want to see the build quality of our Alibaba camper, and I will show you that. But first I'm just going to show you how we get into bed and what it's like up in our bed. So the big side here drops down, it's on gas struts, so it holds itself up. And then we just climb up, drop the small half down. Honestly, the best thing about this tent is how much stuff we fit in here. We have 4 pillows, I think -3 degree sleeping bag, which is really thick and plush. And then we also have a Kmart mattress topper, which you might be able to see. Honestly does nothing because the mattress in this thing is kind of bad. And because we've been closing it and opening it so much, the mattress topper has lost lots of its spring in the foam, but that's what you get for paying like 20 bucks for something. So in the future, we would definitely look at upgrading the mattresses and the mattress topper to make it a bit more comfortable to sleep. And then up in here is kind of what you'd expect from any new modern rooftop tent. It's got a cool light that goes the whole way around. It didn't come with any USBs or anything. So I did a dodgy little job and made this thing here. Don't worry, all these cables are not for it. They're just USBs for the lighting that plug in. And then we have 2 power display USB type Cs. And this is where I chuck all the extra tensioning rods for the window. I also did another dodgy, and the solar wires just come in here through grommets. There's 2 grommets on each side, plus the grommets that are for the weather sealer. So it works, no more water leaks in with some silicone. And then there is their version of a overhead organizer, which, as you can see, the stitches are all ripping. But luckily the stitches on the tent are a bit better quality. Keyword, a bit better, because the canvas, I mean, as you'll be able to see, if I just quickly chuck my hand on the outside, is very, very thin, borderline see-through. We've not really had any water ingress issues yet, but I think that's because we've only had like 2 days of rain, and that rain was very like sparing, wasn't massive downpour. So I do not think that whatever GSM this canvas is would stand up to your like American or even Victorian rain and snow conditions. In saying that though, this mesh is some of the best mesh I've ever seen on a rooftop tent. It is so small and fine compared to other ones that I've seen that no midgies and stuff get through. Like, you can see how small these midgies are here, and they are not getting through that. The only time we really get bugs up in here is because we've left this open and the back door open, they kind of fly in through. And the only other real issue I have with the tent itself is this front awning. Like, you can see just how floppy it is. There's just a bit of extra material there. I don't know whether I need to get different tensioning poles that kind of pull it out more. Maybe a rod that goes across would help. But I definitely will try and figure something out for this situation if we keep this exact tent. And one idea I have floated, which will be hard for you to see, you should be able to see there. The whole tent canvas just zips on, and then to remove the actual canvas itself, and then to remove the zip itself, it's just that like C-channel stuff with the hard rod that slides around. So I would be able to re-canvas this whole tent if I really wanted to, very, very easily. Well, I wouldn't do it, I would pay someone to do it. But that is an option that I have. But really investing that kind of money into a setup like this, I would be wanting to fix the canopy downstairs first, because that is really where the issues are. So before I go downstairs, I did kind of miss out on one really important part. We have our fan mounted here, which just quickly connects on. It's a Socorro one or something like that. It's the really popular brand. They draw like no power. And then here is our iPad mount. It has Allen key on the other side, so you can really position it where you want, and it's super rigid. Like, it's stuck in really well, and I just riv nutted it in. This mount is just from Kmart, so cheap, but honestly is the best built one that we could find on the internet that was like less than $100. But this entire setup was kind of based on the gamble that my Alibaba Canopy camper wasn't an absolute piece of it kind of is, kind of isn't. Like, for example, you can see all these tape marks. That is because we have a dust ingress issue that goes not through the glass, I think, but it actually goes through the top of the door, which then sits on this ridge here, slowly vibrates over time, and then pours out onto the bench top and on top of the fridge. And then the window doesn't slide anymore because there's so much dust built up in the rail. I suppose I can just hose it out and fix it, but I don't think it's meant to do that. And then ever since the day that I got it, this window would also fill up with water, then I would open it, and then it would leak through and rain into the back of the setup. Not really ideal. And then, to make it even more fun, after we finished the Gibb River Road, which is a really long corrugated road, if you don't know, the whole thing has broken away from the glue. So now this window could fall out at any moment. I mean, in saying that, the actual door construction is pretty decent. Like, it's not that bendy. The movement you can see is actually coming from the hinges, and the molly panel is decent, and there's a couple riv nuts in it which are really useful. But then if we come around to this side, we have the same molly panel, but if you listen to this, you should be able to hear it through my mic. That is the molly panel vibrating on the door itself because they didn't put in enough little spot welds along it. So if I close it, you can hear this. So when we're driving, that's the noise we can hear as it hits corrugations and vibrations. And another thing I do really want to fix on the tailgate, which we talked about before, was that storage. But the seal is also absolutely terrible. This bottom one is working a treat, which we put in while we're on the road, but the side seals that we put on were also doing a good job, but they all eventually peeled off, which is why you can't see them anymore. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a bit of flat alley, put it here with a pinch weld right angle seal, so the seal will sit flush and on this gap here, which is like what the proper kits do, and they will just riv nut in and screw in, and that will be removable, but it'll be better than what I have now. All right, there we go. There is pretty much as unbiased of a walkthrough of my camping setup I could do, since I did build it myself, but I was trying to be very critical so you could all kind of learn from what I did good and what I did terribly. But you're going to want to hit that subscribe button because we are finally working behind the scenes on the 60 series build, which is what I know you actually want to see. So get subscribed because it's coming.